People think silence means weakness. In my family, it meant survival. They thought I was the one who needed saving. Turns out, I was the only one who'd been paying attention. My name is Oliver. I'm 27. I rent a small place on the edge of town, make my own coffee, and keep my head down. I walk to work when I can. I fix the wobbly chair instead of buying a new one. On paper, my life looks unremarkable. Early mornings, long shifts, a library card that's seen better days. But there's a tension under the routine, old expectations breathing down my neck, the kind that make every quiet win feel like contraband. If you told me at 17 that I'd one day inherit my grandfather's entire estate, $3.5 million, I would have laughed. At 17, I was measuring time by how many shifts it took to afford groceries. At 18, I slept in the back seat of my car. Quiet doesn't mean empty. It just means no one knew what I was carrying. I grew up in a house where appearances paid the bills. Dad was a regional manager at a logistics company. Mom taught part-time and acted like she ran the neighborhood. My sister, Claire, was the poster child. Straight as cheerleader, the one who never scuffed the picture frame. I wasn't rebellious. I just preferred books to engines, sketchpads to scoreboards, and questions to rules. In our house, that was the same thing as misbehavior. Money was a weapon dressed as love. Claire got the brand new car at 17. I got told to be grateful for whatever rolled down the hill to me. Her college was a ribbon cutting. Mine was a lecture. Be a man. Earn your place. The night that sealed it, Dad leaned across the dinner table, eyes cold as a ledger, and said, "If you're still under our roof by 18, you're a failure." I laughed because the alternative was breaking. At 18, they staged my exit like a school assembly. No money, no safety net, a pat speech about learning the value of hard work. I left with a backpack, 2 shirts, and a part-time wage that barely outran hunger. That night, the back seat of my car was home. On Instagram, Claire smiled from a sorority house with a new MacBook and Dad's credit card. Only one person kept a door open. My grandfather, Dad's father. He never mistook quiet for weakness. "You think before you speak," he'd say. He let me crash on his couch, fed me meals that didn't come from a gas station, and asked questions the way a person looks for a North Star. I never told him everything, but he knew enough. He saw the flinch in my shoulders when Dad's name came up. He became the father I didn't get. The next decade wasn't glamorous. It was steady. I worked long hours, saved in small stacks, learned to live within lines I drew myself. I learned to make a dent quietly, returning a borrowed ladder on time, training the new kid at work without rolling my eyes, fixing a process because it needed fixing, not because someone was watching. One small moment still lives in my chest. An older coworker, hands rough from years of lifting, pulled me aside. "You're the only one who listens all the way through," he said. "Keep that." It wasn't a promotion. It wasn't a raise. But it was proof. Purpose can sound like that, soft, specific, true. My family didn't notice. Or they refused to. Claire's texts came in filtered light. Vacations, a new house, the practiced angle of her chin. My parents were silent unless they needed something. Then Mom's voice sweetened on command. "Oliver, honey, how are you?" A question with a net beneath it. I kept answers short. I wasn't going to be their backup plan. To them, I was still the kid who didn't fit, the one who drowned without a lifeguard. They measured success by noise. I was learning that mine could be built in whispers. Then came the call I'd been dreading and expecting. My grandfather passed. Grief didn't arrive with a speech. It settled into the room and turned the air heavy. He'd been sick, but I'd convinced myself he'd find one more stride. When the lawyer reached out about the will reading, I figured maybe a watch, a letter, something that smelled like aftershave and old books. I did not imagine a room with oak paneling, my parents and Claire dressed like they were heading to a gala, and the air thick with the kind of sweetness that rots teeth. "Don't worry, Oliver," Mom whispered, nails dimpling my sleeve. "We'll make sure the estate is handled properly." Dad added, casual as a threat, "We'll manage it for you." They were already counting money that wasn't theirs. I could see it in their eyes, the same certainty they wore when they pushed me out at 18. The lawyer cleared his throat. Papers shifted. Per the wishes of the late Mr. Harold Montgomery, he said. His entire estate, valued at approximately $3.5 million, is hereby left to his grandson Oliver Montgomery. Time stopped. For half a breath I saw my grandfather's smirk. Just a flicker. Like he'd been planning this beat all along. My parents' smiles froze. Claire's jaw dropped. The lawyer turned another page. There are additional stipulations you'll want to hear. And that's when the room changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the ground to tilt toward me. The stipulations are explicit. The lawyer continued, voice steady. No trustees. No family oversight. Full control to Oliver alone. Mom's smile snapped, then reassembled itself. Too tight, too bright. Of course, she chirped, patting my sleeve. We'll guide him. It's a family effort. Dad steepled his fingers. $3.5 million can ruin a young man without experience. We'll manage the funds on his behalf. Claire crossed a leg, the polished heel flashing like a threat. Don't take it the wrong way, Oliver. You've never been responsible. Remember the credit card you maxed freshman year? Tiny laugh designed to bruise. The lawyer didn't look up. Mr. Montgomery anticipated this. The will forbids anyone but Oliver from managing or representing the estate. He glanced at me. A flicker that said he knew what they'd try. Mom's hand locked tighter on my arm. Sweetheart, we only want what's best for you. Think of it like synergy. The word benefit drifted between us, heavy with the wrong people in mind. I said nothing. Not from fear, but because silence properly held can be a blade. When we stood to leave, Mom announced, we'll discuss details at home. You'll come by tonight. Dad added, we'll handle investments, property, taxes. Don't worry. Claire leaned in as we reached the door. You're lucky. Without us, you'd drown. I met her eyes and let the quiet do its work. Lucky wasn't the word. Chosen was. And they could feel it. That evening, Claire showed up at my apartment uninvited. Expensive perfume first, entitlement second. She walked in like the lease had her name on it. Cute place, she said, eyebrows lifting. But you'll need something grander now. Here's the plan. Dad handles the money. Mom handles the people. I handle your image. I don't need handlers, I said. Grandpa left it to me. A beat. Then the mask. You wouldn't have made the meeting time if Mom hadn't told you, she said lightly, testing for weakness. A week later, the lawyer called. Someone presented themselves at the bank as your representative. No authorization, I said, breath sharpening. None accepted, he replied. They were insistent. The escalation was quiet, then everywhere. A long scratch along my car. Anonymous noise complaints to my landlord. Strangers' glances, slanted by gossip. Must be nice, living off an old man. Fear tried to rethread itself through my ribs. If I spent carefully, they'd say I was controlled. If I didn't spend, they'd say I was incompetent. Either way, they'd write the headline. I opened a drawer and found the envelope my grandfather gave me on my 21st. His handwriting tilted forward like it wanted me to keep going. The world won't give, you already know that. It will try to take. Don't let it. When the time comes, don't shrink. Stand tall. They can only take what you hand them. I read the letter until the words set like bone. Then I began. I documented everything. The bank incident, Claire's messages, the letters that arrived dressed as advice. I saved screenshots. I dated phone calls. I wrote down the origin of every rumor I could trace. I stayed late at the office, reading estate law on public computers like I was cramming for a life I intended to pass. The loneliness was real. The work was quiet. But quiet is where steel cools. I didn't broadcast a comeback. I built one. I hired a low-profile financial advisor, no family ties, no golf course whisper network. He asked careful questions, took careful notes, and handed me a plain plan that didn't need spotlights. Diversified investments, taxes covered, long-term stability locked. You're capable, he said at the door. You just needed it named. I bought a modest house, no chandeliers, no victory parade. Just a key that didn't belong to my parents' expectations. Standing in the empty living room the first night, I listened to the quiet fill the corners. No one could throw me out here. At work, I leaned in, volunteered, over-delivered. A small promotion, then a real one. "You've got leadership in you," my manager said. "Start using it." I joined a local charity board in my grandfather's name, where his quiet generosity still echoed. People who respected him began to nod when I spoke. Gossip shifted, first to a murmur, then to a hush. Maybe Harold knew what he was doing. That terrified my family more than any courtroom ever could. Claire tried the porch again. This time I didn't let her cross it. "Don't get cocky," she warned. "Dad's already looking into ways." She stopped herself, but the sentence was already finished in my head. To take back what was never his. So I kept preparing. Allies where they couldn't reach, records they couldn't erase, boundaries they couldn't charm. And then, at a charity event crowded with paper cups and honest hands, I met Daniel Grant, a retired attorney with chess player eyes who had known my grandfather for years. "Harold planned for rough water," he said quietly after we shook hands. "He set protections you should understand." For the first time, I realized I wasn't just defending ground. I might be standing on a design. Daniel was right. My grandfather had prepared for storm weather. But I still underestimated how far my parents would go. One gray Tuesday morning, the call came. "Oliver," Daniel said, voice clipped but calm. "Your parents filed a petition. They're claiming you're unfit to manage the estate. They're asking the court for guardianship of your assets." Guardianship. At 27. They weren't just maneuvering in shadows anymore. They were willing to brand me incompetent in public. For a moment, I almost laughed at the absurdity. Then the sting hit. This was humiliation by design. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom in a plain suit. My parents sat with Claire between them, all three looking smug, as if victory was already inked. Their attorney painted me as reckless, unstable, financially naive. Claire nodded at each line like an actress hitting her marks. Then Daniel rose, calm, precise. "What we have here is not a question of competence, Your Honor, but of greed." One by one, he laid out the evidence. The forged attempt at the bank. The letters proposing I hand over control. The text messages dripping with condescension. The will stipulations, clear, ironclad, explicit. And finally, he placed the leather-bound notebook on the table. In his own handwriting, Mr. Harold Montgomery anticipated this. He wrote, "If they attempt to take what is not theirs, it will be proof enough of why I chose Oliver." The courtroom went still. My mother paled. My father's jaw clenched. Claire's gaze fell to the floor. The judge's ruling was swift. Petition denied. The estate remains under Oliver Montgomery's sole control. Further attempts to interfere will be met with sanctions. This matter is closed. In less than an hour, their arrogance had been stripped bare in front of everyone. Reputation collapses quietly, like rot in a beam. The country club circle stopped calling my mother. My father's clients canceled meetings. Within months, he was retired early. And Claire, her golden child, sheen dulled overnight. People remembered her now as the woman who tried to rob her own brother. Her boyfriend left. She moved back into my parents' tired house, where bitterness became their only common language. Meanwhile, my life widened. The estate became not just money but momentum. I invested in causes my grandfather would have approved of. The charity board grew and my name with it. Work promoted me again, this time with real authority. Respect, earned, not inherited, found me. One evening, I parked across the street from my parents' house. The same house I was exiled from at 18 with nothing but a backpack. The porch light was on, but the lawn sagged, the shutters needed paint, the place looked tired. For years, this house had been my measure of failure. Now I looked at it and felt nothing but clarity. They hadn't destroyed me, they had forged me. Every dismissal, every insult, every cruel word had become the iron in my spine. I rolled down the window, let the night air in, and whispered words I finally believed. Grandpa was right. I decide what I'm worth. Then I drove away, not with triumph, not with revenge, but with freedom. Success doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Steady, undeniable, yours alone. And now I want to ask you, where are you watching from? What's your quiet victory? The one no one saw coming. Share it below. And if you've ever been underestimated, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let's remind the world, quiet doesn't mean weak. It means ready.